Hello everyone and welcome back to 101 Great Goals for another Talking Points video where we get different contributors on to talk through the main talking points from within football. It's a great title and it serves its purpose. This weekend we have got Charlotte Duncker on, who is Man United correspondent for Goal. Charlotte, thank you very much for coming on. Like I say, we won't mention yesterday's result too much, but just in terms of Manchester United, how is the feeling around there at the moment after yesterday's defeat?
I think yesterday for United was disappointing, as you'd expect. Solskjaer's always said they never get an easy cup draw. I'm not saying Southampton is an easy cup draw, but they did beat them 9-0 earlier in the season. So it was there dangling like a carrot in front of them and they just couldn't get the job done. But to be fair to Leicester, don't take anything away from them. I thought they were brilliant yesterday. They really deserved their win and to go through. And United they just weren't really at the races at all. There's debatable if he picked the right team. Why did he start with the two best players this season have been Luke Shaw and Bruno Fernandes? They both started on the bench. Like yesterday, arguably, was one of their biggest games of the season because the league's gone. So they want silverware. They're fighting. They're not in the League Cup anymore. They're fighting in the Europa League. They got the job done there on Thursday. So it was a bit dubious with his team selection from the start. He said after the game, if he had his time again, he'd pick the same team again.
So just before we move on to the main points of the video then, you obviously have a large Man United following on social media. What was the feeling yesterday then after the game?
Well, I think whenever you go on Twitter after United have lost, Ollie out seems to be one of the trends on my thing. And I just think, you've got to be joking me. Like, you can't, every single time a team loses a game, you can't just call for the manager to be sacked. It's just not realistic. It's not real life. I think a lot of people were a bit confused as to why Bruno Fernandes at least didn't start. I personally said when the team sheet was handed round, why isn't Luke Shaw there? Because I didn't think Tellez had a particularly poor game, but he's been so key for United going forward as well down that left-hand side. Pogba played on the left. He's only just come back from injury. I think if we'd seen that link up between them down that side, then maybe United might have posed more of a threat going forward than they did. So I think in my mentions, there was a lot of people going on that they weren't happy with the team that he'd selected. And then a lot of expletives directed towards Fred. None of us could quite understand how when he made them 4 changes on the 64th minute, how on earth Fred managed to stay on the pitch. He gave away possession, I think it was 3 times before he basically assisted Iheanacho for his first goal. So that was a baffling one. So that contributed to a lot of what on earth in my mentions, probably words we shouldn't be repeating on this video. But
absolutely.
I think, to me, I'm not saying Twitter fans aren't real fans, but I think when you look at the reaction to fans on Twitter, and if you spoke to people that go to the games and are more measured with their view on it, I think it's slightly different. Obviously, everyone that supports the club would have been disappointed, but to start with the whole Ollie out thing after that, again, for me, it's just a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming up later on in this video, because we asked you, the fans, for your opinions, we've got Dean Henderson or David De Gea. Who's going to stick around for next season? Is it possible to keep them both? Manchester City possibly doing the quadruple this season. I know Charlotte may not want to talk about that one. Kelechi Iheanacho, of course, scored 2 goals against United. Could he be a successor for Jamie Vardy? And we've also got Martin Odegaard at Arsenal as well, should they keep him beyond his loan this season. So we'll jump straight into it then. We had a point from Nick over the weekend who said it's too difficult to keep 2 good goalkeepers happy. So if Henderson doesn't get assurances of a regular starting place next season, then I think he will leave, unfortunately. Massive decision for the club over the summer on this one. Charlotte, where do you stand on the whole David De Gea or Dean Henderson? Because obviously David De Gea has done so much for the club over the last 10 years. But on the flip side, Dean Henderson's coming through and he doesn't command a massive wage like David De Gea. So is it a big decision in the summer?
Yeah, I think it is massive for Solskjaer in the summer. It was a big decision last summer. Henderson had options not to come back to United to go out on loan, but Solskjaer wanted to keep him at the club. He promised he would give him chances. which up until recently we haven't really seen him really given those chances or given a run of games. De Gea went back to Spain for the birth of his daughter, and that's given him Henderson a chance to have 6 games, a good run in the team. And I think up until that point, obviously United historically they've had a league keeper and a cup keeper. That's not anything new. Romero would play all the cup games when it was between him and De Gea before, so I don't not agree with that. But the problem when you've got 2 good keepers like you have there is that it's this culture in terms of when one of them makes one single mistake, there's the calling for them to be dropped straight away. And if you look at any other team in the league, that's just not how it works. Like City, Edison, if he makes one mistake, they're not saying get him out of the team. And do you know what I mean? It's just
absolutely, yeah.
It doesn't seem like a normal way to run your goalkeeping department. There's always that established number 1 and your cup keeper, or the one who is number 2 that comes in when is needed. Whereas at the minute there feels like there is this fight for the number 1 shirt. I think at the start of the season, Henderson's presence boosted De Gea, because the back end of last season, no one was really convinced about what De Gea was doing anymore. Henderson was there, had finished off a really good loan move with Sheffield United. Everyone was saying, bring him back. You've got a ready-made number 1 there. Bring him back and put him straight in. That's not happened, but I think him coming did improve De Gea. Obviously, we've still seen a few different mistakes, and I just think when you've got Henderson behind Lindelof and Maguire as a unit of a 3, they seem to look a lot more comfortable when he's there, and he commands his area a bit better. That he's got more presence about him, and he's shown, I think, in these 6 games. Obviously, he made a mistake when Milan scored that equaliser at Old Trafford. But he's shown in those 6 games that maybe he does have what it takes. So it's going to be a massive decision for Solskjaer, because De Gea is not going to want to be the number 2 cup keeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Dean Henderson as well, what's massive is he's got so much confidence for a young keeper coming into that role. And it is great to see. And he's got such a good future ahead of him. He's not going to want to play number 2 goalkeeper. But then how do you justify having 350 grand a week sat on the bench as De Gea if he's number 2? So is it best in the summer, I don't know how you feel about it, to maybe just say to De Gea, look, the time's come that they need to part ways and give Dean Henderson the whole season? Because, like you say, you can't really see Dean Henderson, sticking around to be number 2.
Of course, but then you've got to find someone to buy him because he's still in a contract. So it's not as simple as just saying, we've decided Dean Henderson is our number 1. De Gea, unfortunately, you're number 2, or we're happy for you to leave. It's not going to work like that. So he's one of the highest players in the club. If he's sat on the bench, it's a waste of money, isn't it? So if they are going down the Henderson route, then they're going to have to do their best to try and sell De Gea. And in the current climate and with the money in the market, no one knows what's going to happen this summer in terms of transfer fees. Are we going to see a repeat of what happened last summer, in that really not that much money was spent? Then how does it fit into that whole thing? I think whenever he speaks to Solskjaer about the goalkeeping situation, he seems pretty happy with it, because whichever one of those 2 he picks, they both seem to have a good game. So it's a conundrum that he's going to have to solve, because you can imagine the conversations that are going to be had in the summer, especially from Henderson's side, if he's not being given more reassurances. You've got a World Cup coming up. He's not going to be number 1 keeper for the Euros, which obviously was what he ideally would have wanted to be. So with another World Cup on the horizon, his aim then is to push himself into that number 1 England position. The only way he's going to do that is if he is playing week in, week out in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's certainly one that is possibly a good problem to have towards the end of the season, especially a big run-in that you've got. And let us know in the comments below what you think between the 2 keepers at Manchester United. Which one would you go for? How can you see it going down? We'll move on now to Arsenal. Obviously 3-0 down against West Ham over the weekend. I think we were all making jokes about Arsenal, and then West Ham just absolutely capitulated and it ended 3-3. But one player that stood out and has stood out for the last few weeks is Martin Odegaard, of course, on loan from Real Madrid. Gooner Talk says we should 100% sign Odegaard. The guy is different class and only 22 years old. Given the length of his contract and position in Real Madrid's midfield pecking order, he would be reasonably cheap. I think he does have a 350 million buyout clause, but whether they'll demand that fee. I'm not too sure. But he's made a good impact, hasn't he, Charlotte? Where do you see Odegaard in terms of that Arsenal squad and the longevity of it? Do you think Arteta can centralise him around his rebuilding projects?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you can see the difference he's made since he's come in. I think Arteta said himself, he takes them to a different level. And if that's the view of them, and we saw how they were struggling at the start of the season, and they're doing all right at the minute, to see a player like that come in and take them up a level, then obviously it's someone that they're going to want to keep at the club, maybe looking at a permanent deal. But as you just mentioned there, the small matter of a buyout clause. And if they stick with that, I don't think there's any club in the world is going to be paying 350 million, be it euros or pounds or whatever, for a player this summer. So I think that's going to be a huge sticking point. Can they get him on loan for another season? I have absolutely no idea how those things work in terms of the conversations that are being had there. But from an Arsenal perspective, from how I've seen outside looking in, the impact that he has had, of course, they'd be daft not to want to keep him for another season, but because of that.
I mean, like you say, finances can be a problem, especially with Arsenal. You know, a team that I think most people know are struggling financially and have been struggling for a while now. But he's come in, hasn't he? He's sort of, no one's really spoke about Mesut Ozil since he's left, because he's done rather well since he's come in, and it does seem like there's something about him that Zidane just doesn't like at Real Madrid, and he's never been given the chance there. But with a world-class potential that he has, if Arsenal were to sign him, could you see him being a quality player for them for the next for the foreseeable?
Yeah, if they manage to sort that deal out, and then it's all about if Arteta wants to rebuild that team, and he's bringing through quite a lot of young players we've seen this season as well, to put his own stamp on it. It's how, if Odegaard is the central to that, it's then who else he can bring in, knowing with the other players knowing he's there, and that vision that Arteta will have as to how he wants to build that team. So I think if they can manage to agree a deal for him, then yeah, he could be really key for them, as he's shown since January. But the key is going to be to that if, and it's all going to be down to Real Madrid, if they want to sell him, how much they want to sell him for, can Arsenal afford that, what deal can be struck. That's going to be another interesting one for the summer.
And if they do sign him for a full season, he could propel them from 10th to 8th next season, which would be great to see for Arsenal. So Odegaard to Arsenal, do you want to see it happen? Arsenal fans, I'm sorry for my joke. Let me know in the comments below. The next point was, of course, Iheanacho. It's like bringing up a ghost now, isn't it? Someone who's who linked up really well with Fred yesterday. And since he left Man City, I mean, I'm a Man City fan, and when he was there, I liked him as a young talent. I thought when we got 25 mil for him, I thought that's a really good deal for us. But I also thought he is a good player and he could potentially do something. It's nice to see him coming into form now. You know, he's got 5 goals in his last 2 games. So with Vardy, potentially, we always say he's potentially getting towards the end of his career, and then next season he'll just bag 30 goals and he'll be just absolutely flying. But we posed a question, and Matthew Sweeney says that I think he's decent in spells, but the way Vardy has played for Leicester, he's almost guaranteed to get you a goal a game, 25 a season, and I don't think that is Iheanacho. Do you think that's a bit harsh on Iheanacho, considering how he's playing at the moment? And maybe if he does get that run and confidence, anything can happen for him.
I think what we've seen in the past few weeks is obviously that he's in fine form at the minute. I think he's got 7 goals in his last 4 games, but he's only just been given a run of games. If you go back and look through his appearances this season in the league, most have been off the bench. He's been unused sub. And he started the last 3 or 4, I think it is, in the league. And then obviously he started yesterday against United. And you can see that he's a striker who's playing with confidence. And that can't be underestimated. If you look at the United forwards, like Anthony Martial, been struggling for goals, but then that confidence hits, and then it gets worse and worse and worse, because they look like he's playing with like someone who hasn't got confidence. Whereas you look at Iheanacho and he's thriving because he's got 7 goals in his last 4 games. So that confidence is there. And I think that's what Brendan Rodgers was saying after it. But it's not just to do with, I don't think, the goals that he's scoring. I think yesterday he linked up really well with Vardys. So I don't think it's necessarily a situation where you should be saying, let's replace one with the other and take Vardy out of the team. Vardy's been central to Leicester's success over the last few years. And like that person said, he's almost always guaranteed to get a goal. It was remarkable he didn't score that brilliant chance he had yesterday to bury the game. But luckily, Iheanacho popped up to ensure he did that for him. But yeah, I think as a partnership in the last few games, they've been working really well and linking up well. And that was what was causing United centre-backs problems yesterday.
I think you mentioned confidence there, and I think that's a key thing. You know, Vardy, 9 times out of 10, he puts that away. If he's on a run of form as well, he definitely puts that away. Iheanacho, I remember there was one point where the ball came over the top. He just touched it round Lindelof like he wasn't even there. And you can see that he is playing with that confidence. I think it's a source of anxiety for Leicester fans, if anything, because Vardy has been that good. How do you replace that? And I think they're always looking to the next best thing, or maybe just thinking Vardy's this age and should we be thinking about someone else? And I think when the time comes that Vardy retires will be a sad day for the Premier League. But I think Iheanacho has got more than enough in his locker to potentially fill that role and then get another striker in. But if you were Brendan Rodgers, would you rather bring in a seasoned striker to replace that massive source of goals, or would you give Iheanacho a chance? I know this is hypothetical. You're not the manager of Leicester, but if you were, where would you go with it, Charlotte?
I think it all depends on who's available and how he continues to do, because he's been great in this little spell that we've seen, but can he sustain that being there, like one of their first choice strikers across a whole entire season? If there's peaks and troughs and he manages 7 goals in 4 games, but then he doesn't score for 10 games, then everyone's going to turn around and say, well, when Vardy leaves, you need to go and be spending £40 million on a new striker. And if the right player becomes available, even if it's only maybe as a stopgap, if you look, United got Cavani, that's probably only going to end up being one season deal. But do you know what I mean? If someone like that becomes available, then maybe Leicester could go in for like a season pro that would help Iheanacho. But I think I can understand why everyone's getting excited about him at the minute, because he's been great in the last few weeks. But now I think the key to him is showing that form over a prolonged period of time and consistency. Can he be the striker who's going to get you 25 to 30 league goals a season? Like, we're going to have to wait and see on that one.
Well, Sergio Aguero's free at the end of the season. We could see him at Leicester, which, you know, Iheanacho and Aguero will be quite a decent partnership. We'll have to get on to the last point, and that is, of course, Manchester City. I've been waiting to bring this one up. So, as we know, Manchester City are in the semi-finals of the FA Cup, the 14 points clear in the league, final of the Carabao Cup, which is Pep's baby, and quarterfinals of the Champions League, albeit with a tough run, potentially with Bayern Munich or PSG in the semi-finals. So we said, if Manchester City were to win the quadruple, first of all, can they? And second of all, would that make them the best English side to ever grace the game? Reece says, as for City, there's no doubt they would be the greatest side ever should they do that. And I know this is hard for you to hear, Charlotte. But where do you stand on Manchester City in the quadruple? Do you actually think it's possible? Because we spoke about it before, and as a Man City fan, I will never admit that it's possible until it's happened. But on the flip side, where do you come into it as a rival?
Yeah, I think of course it's possible, because the League Cup, they've got Spurs in the final. On paper, fine. So that's what one boxed off. I'm not saying all these games are going to be as easy, fine, as easy as they come across on paper. I think you've got a really tough draw in the FA Cup semi-final. Chelsea are barely conceding any goals, so I think that's going to be a really interesting clash. But there's no reason, if you look at the form of the two clubs, there's no reason why they shouldn't fancy themselves in that. And then if you look at the other semi-final draw between Leicester and Southampton, then I'd argue that the more difficult tie for City then is the semi-final clash rather than the final. And then the Champions League all comes down to that, really. It's the small matter of that. And I think we've seen in the past, I don't know, Guardiola sometimes appears to overthink these big games. And he just hasn't managed to get there to the final. So I think it's not impossible. Obviously, Guardiola is saying at the minute. No, did you see that press conference he did with Zinchenko? And
Yeah,
Zinchenko
yeah,
was saying,
he didn't like that, did he?
no, Zinchenko was saying, yeah, no problem. Of course we can win all four. But there's obviously that confident feeling within the dressing room at City that they can do it, and why not? Like, you see the way they're playing, and they've played the majority of the season without a natural centre forward, and that's how they've decided to play. And you've got John Stones popping up with goals in massive games. So who needs a centre forward in the system? But I just think if you look at the way they've been playing, the results they've been getting, the way they've ground out results as well, it's not necessarily been smashing teams 6, 7, 8 every single week. They've managed to put in gritty performances to grind the results out, like against Everton at the weekend. So I think from an outsider's perspective, I don't see there's any reason why they can't believe they can go on and win all four.
And just finally from you then, where would that rank City? If it's all hypothetical, we'll probably only win the Carabao Cup now or nothing. But where would they rank as, well, up there with the greats? We're talking about United 99, Arsenal Invincibles, Chelsea 05. Where would they rank then?
Of course, they'd be up there with the best, wouldn't they? If they go on the season to win this season, every single competition that they entered, that's never been done in this country before. So of course they'd be up there. I think in terms of them ranking against the treble side, that when United won the treble, United had a slightly harder task in the league because they didn't have that gap that City have got now, have they? So City, in theory, could now prioritise cup competitions. I don't think they're going to do that for 1 second. But of course, if City go on and win all 4 competitions, even if they go and do the treble and match what United did in 1999 and some reason don't manage to win the League Cup, I think you've still got to regard them as up there. But in terms of longevity, then the key for them is to keep retaining the title over and over again, because I think there was a lot of discussion about Liverpool's side being the greatest that we've ever seen in the Premier League. And then look what's happened to them this season. It just proves how difficult it is to go and retain a title. So of course, they'll definitely be up there as one of the greatest, if not the greatest.
Yeah, we'll end on that. We'll end on that then. But yeah, let us know what you think about what we've mentioned down there in the comments. What your thoughts on everything that we've mentioned. But we'll have to leave it there. So we just want to say thank you, Charlotte, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And all of Charlotte's links will be in the description below. So make sure you check her out. And then all that's left for us to do is say goodbye. Thank you, everyone who's watched. If you are new around here, please subscribe to the channel. Check out our social media pages, including our new TikTok page, which is doing really well at the moment. But thank you again, Charlotte, for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.